In my living room, my mom and my great uncle, my Chudonanabai, sat on the couch and my siblings spread across the room. I sat on the floor, on the maroon carpets, my back leaning against the wall, captivated by my Chudonanabai's stories of cousins I've never met and uncles who lived abroad. My Chudonanabai was the bridge. He's the one who would always visit family, who would always keep everyone updated to the point where his house was under construction because he wanted it to be a center for his descendants, the descendants of Abdus Subhan. So when we went to visit Bangladesh, this is where your roots are, this is where you are from. And that's who he was, that's who he is. And so it's getting late, and he turns to me and he says, "You're in college now, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What are you studying?" "English education." "Ah, a teacher. So, do you know what level you're going to teach?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure, but definitely not high school." And I see the smile forming, and he goes, "Oh, you're just scared that all the students are going to be taller than you." And I just smile and shake my head. And as he gets ready to leave that day, he turns to me and he says, "Focus on your education. Make your parents proud. You don't have to worry about me. I'm already proud." And so he leaves. Fast forward 2 months, November 2nd, 2009, and we get a phone call. My mom picks up and then later takes us to my brother's room and says, "Your Chudonanabai was in a hit and run and they couldn't save him." In that moment, my world stopped. What's going on? And the only thing that kept going through my mind is, we have to tell my grandfather. And so we go to my grandfather's house and my Chudonanabai son is there. And this is a big fan who I've never seen cry. And his face is tear-stained, his eyes are red. And even as we gather there, he's still trying to make light of the situation. His father just passed away, and he's there, he's teasing my uncle about the fact that he became religious because we don't give him sugar, we don't give him anything sweet, he's diabetic. So he became religious so he can go to the mosque and have all the sweets he wants. And so that's who my Chudonanabai was. His son was living his legacy and honoring that. And the next day was a Monday, and I had to go back to campus. And I had a double to myself. It was a big room, I was new, it was freshman year, and there wasn't really anybody there. I was away from my family, I was isolated, and in that moment of grief, I had to hold on to something. And I'm like, there's no family, there are no friends. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this moment and I'm going to pray. And I didn't realize that prayer could be something so powerful. And that first frustration that day, I was there with my forehead pressed to the ground and the tears were falling, and I was just so ready to surrender, to cut out my heart, to stop the pain. It just hurt, and so I cried and cried and cried. And when I rose from that prayer, I rose so much lighter and so much stronger, and realizing that inna ma'al usri yusra, fa inna ma'al usri yusra, that God's promise is true. With hardship comes ease. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. And so I stood and I recognized, okay, I will get through this. This isn't the end, it's another beginning. And so I became active on campus. I joined campus ministry. We did a lot of service because service and serving God's creation, we are serving God. And so as we're doing that, I was educating people on social justice issues, homelessness, hunger, poverty, building houses. We were there, we were doing it, and it's something that I still do in my everyday life. It's being a youth coordinator and teaching seniors as well, and as a member of Turning Point, as an employee of Turning Point, I get to see these seniors transform. 2 of them pass their citizenship test. one senior, and this is my favorite story, learned how to use a MetroCard and is able to take public transit by herself now. I have 2 youth members who participated in our Young Women's Leadership Training Series, and 2 of them found internships through us. And it's those little things that add up. It's me holding the door open. It's me telling my baby brother, hey, I'm proud of you, kid. It's those little things, and I really think that it's honoring my Pseudonymized legacy through and changing the world one moment, one person, and one smile at a time. Thank you.
Again, what a wonderful, wonderful tribute. And what a wonderful legacy. I love this idea of just these tiny little moments in which you make the world a better place. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to take that with me, and I'm going to live out just a little bit of his legacy as well because of you. So I appreciate that. Tasmin, everybody. Coming up next, the next storyteller said that her favorite thing about New York is that it is bustling and full of life. And why is that special to her? Because she doesn't like quiet places. She's a city girl. Ladies and gentlemen, Anne.
I'm eating at Kanji Village with one of our students. It's my first time taking a student out because she's about to give a speech to one of our donors, and my colleague who usually doesn't isn't able to come. We're sitting at the back of the room. It's weekday evening, it's pretty empty. You can smell like the grease mixed in a little bit with the bleach that they use to bleach the plates, which they're probably not supposed to do. And we're both like, in our blazers because it's kind of a formal event later. And I just want to make sure she gets fed so she can do a good job with her speech later. So we get our tea, we get the menus, and I'm like flipping through the pages and asking her, what do you like to eat? And there's like the different columns, like the chicken, the vegetables, and she just tells me, oh, I like to eat anything. I eat everything. So, I ask her a little bit more. She still doesn't really tell me, so I figure I'll make some suggestions. So I'm like, what about the chicken? Dan likes the chicken. Dan's my colleague, who she knows as well. And so she says, okay, sure, chicken sounds good. And then, we get to the vegetables. I was like, how about we pick a vegetable? And she said she eats every vegetable. So, looking at the list, I see, I'm like, oh, well, snow pea leaves. Everyone likes snow pea leaves, and it's kind of expensive. Maybe that's something she doesn't get to eat that much or order that much when she goes out. So I just suggest the snow pea leaves. And she says, that sounds great. So we order the snow pea leaves, the chicken, I think a rice dish, and they take our order. And while we're waiting for our order, she's like sitting there looking at her speech. And so I ask her, how do you feel? Like, are you feeling okay? And so she says she's nervous, which, totally normal, and I completely expected that. And, but she's like, her head is down, her hair is long and flowing, and it's not tied up, and she's like just bending down over it, and then looks up just a little bit to tell me that she's actually very worried about her accent and that later the donors aren't going to be able to understand her. And of course, my initial reaction is reassuring her and telling her, no, you're going to do a great job. Your English is great. People can understand you. You're a great storyteller. And then she just moved 2 years ago from China, so she was a little concerned about that. But then she says that she's worried that if she does a bad job, we won't have a successful event, and we won't be fundraising that much tonight, and then we won't have the money to go help other students like her. So in that moment, I'm very surprised, and then I feel a little guilty because I had no idea that she really understood, I guess, the magnitude of the things that we're doing at our events, and I felt like we put so much pressure on her. And I had no idea that, I knew her background, and I went to her speech practices, so I knew that her story was about how her parents were not supportive of her pursuing her education, and they wanted her to just, be done with high school already and take care of her younger sibling. But I realized that I didn't actually really understand her. And, I ordered those snow pea shoots thinking that maybe she'll like them because it's expensive and she doesn't get to eat it, but what if she doesn't even like snow pea shoots, right? Just because I like it and it's nice doesn't mean she likes it. And I'm reminded of my mom who, always has the best intentions, but always wants to help and sometimes isn't really sure, maybe isn't doing the best way. Like if I casually mention that I really like these rice balls, she'll wake up early every morning when I go home and go buy these rice balls for me. And maybe I don't want to eat the rice balls every morning, but more importantly, I feel, that, and I feel guilty and stressed that she's waking up early to go do this for me when I'm an adult and I can definitely do that on my own. So I brought back in, I realized that I don't actually understand what our student wants, and I realized that even though, she's this kid and I want to help her and I have the best intentions, but maybe I'm not seeing her as three-dimensional as she actually is. And actually she has her passions and her worries beyond her background, beyond the things that we're trying to do to help her. And so even with my best intentions, I learned that I should always ask and not assume. Thank you.
And everybody. What I love on your story is that it's about listening. And as a storyteller, there's just this thing about it's not just talking, it's about hearing people. And that story is just such an affirmation on that importance. And it touched me extra special, and I just want to say thank you. And everyone. You've got 4 more, and I'm just checking in how people are doing. Are you enjoying this experience? Was I right when I said we were going to meet some amazing people today? I'm going to take just a tiny little sideline on the stories and tell you just a little bit about the moth, because there's a question, and I know that somebody has already asked somebody tonight, somewhere, somehow, and that is, why is it called the moth? So I'm going to tell you why. And this has to do with listening. So it actually, yeah. So it's the founder of the Moth is George Dawes Green, and he's an author of novels and screenplays, and I think right now he might be waiting for the BBC for a television show, but he's a very busy guy. But he used to live in Georgia in an island off the coast, and he and his pals would hang out on Wando's back porch and drink bourbon. And then they would start telling stories. And they loved these stories, and one day somebody was like, hey, we should just meet, not for the bourbon, but for the stories. And so the bourbon was still there, but they're telling the stories. And so it's like, let's do another story night. And so they're meeting up for these story nights, and they start noticing that the moths are getting in on the screens and dancing around the lights. And they start being the creative and poetic folks that they are, that we are like these moths to flame when it comes to these stories. We are that attracted to these stories. So anyhow, as we move forward, George got a screenplay, was going to be made into a film, and he came to New York to be part of that. And he noticed in the hustle bustle of this big city, and especially in the show business industry, people weren't listening to one another. They're sort of talking at and talking around and yeah, what's your point, and moving on. And he started feeling really lonely even though he was in a crowd. And he thought, I need a storytelling night. I need a moth night in my apartment. And so he created one, and he invited his friends, and they loved it so much. They wanted more people to come, and it soon grew too big for his apartment. And since then, it's just been really organic. It got into the back room of a coffee shop, and then the back room of a bar, and then in an actual theater, and got involved with people who understood nonprofit, and got involved with more and more people, and it's just grown and grown, and 20 years later, we are who we are today. But it's the magic of stories, and it's the magic of needing that space where people can listen to each other. So, anyhow, that's the story of the moth. Coming up next is a woman who said that her favorite thing about New York is that it's a village pretending to be a city. And the why of it it was just so poetic, is that it's just, it's all these tiny little villages in this big city and these communities that overlap, and really everybody does kind of know each other. Ladies and gentlemen, Mira.
My father and I are in the yard in the back of my house in India, and I'm teaching him to exercise for the first time in our lives. So he's had a stroke, and the left side of his body is fully paralyzed. And I say, raise your hand, Daddy, and he does it. And he's kind of smiling his lopsided smile, and he's delighted, not because he's doing the exercise which hurts him, but because I am there with him, making him do the work. But I'm not happy to be there. I want to be out of there. I'm sad because this is not the man I know. This is not the father I've had with me all these years. And I can't see him like this, hopping around, carrying his limbs in odd ways. It hurts. Because the daddy I know is the one who sits around on a Sunday morning with 5 newspapers spread around him and fights with me about what Marxism is. Or he's the one who comes home at 3 a.m. from his journalism shift and then gets up at 8 to take me to the library so I can get my Tarzan fix, or as I grow older, my Faulkner fix, or my Fitzgerald fix. He's the one who basically is always telling me stories. The stories of how he was a communist in hiding in Kerala, and I lived like that day to day, going from house to house. Or the one who tells the world stories. He has a column that is read by millions of people every day. So that's the father I know, not this person who has become silent and quiet and cannot speak anymore because the stroke took away his voice. Now his stories are stuck inside him with nowhere to go. I can teach him to move his limbs, raise your hand, Daddy, but I can't move his mind anymore. So fast forward, 4 years later, I'm in America, and I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer in a writing program. There's an envelope that comes from a publication I've sent a story to, and I slit it open, and $200 check falls out. That is the first money that I've ever made telling stories. What do I want to do? Pick up the phone and say, Daddy, one of my stories is out in the world. But he's not there. He died 2 years ago. There's nobody for me to tell that, hey, my stories are out there in the world, right? So I become a storyteller, I'm a writer, I have a book, I get published, and life goes on. But there's something missing. I want to be able to do something more with these skills that I have, and I don't know what that is. But I get an opportunity to start working for a small organization that works with South Asian seniors. And I'm like, this is interesting. I do programming sometimes. I'm doing all kinds of different things. But one day the deputy director says, we should do a senior profile. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what that is, but okay. So I find myself in the basement of a mosque in Jamaica, New York. And I'm speaking, and there is this lady that I've decided should be the senior, I should do the senior profile on. And I'm going to call her Bilqis Begum. And she's this tiny woman in a full burqa, and she's sitting there, and I say, okay, can you tell me something about yourself? I had no expectations. Profiles, they basically say, I thank Allah for everything that I've had, my children are wonderful, they're an engineer, they're a doctor, that kind of thing. So then she starts speaking, and she says, I am the first one of the first batches of medical students, women who became doctors in Bangladesh. And when the 1972 war happened, I decided I was going to go to India to work in the refugee camps. So I decided to hide and basically go to India in secret ways, because the Pakistanis are everywhere and they are bombing Bangladesh. And this woman, this tiny little sparrow of a woman, hid in the bulrushes and went on boats and somehow got to India and was working in the camps. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this story that this senior has, right? This story that she's now giving me for safekeeping. She's now trusted me enough to, tell me this, and now it's somehow my work to put it out there and, let the world see this. And I think at that moment, I sort of find a new way to tell stories, to get those stories that are stuck inside people and unstuck them, and to put it out in the world. And that's what I do now. Thank you.
I'm sort of waxing poetic on this in the rehearsal because I love this story. I also really have a passion for seniors and their stories, and I am just dying to see some of the things that you have collected. Really good work on the story and really good work in the world. Thank you so much. Mira, everybody. Our next storyteller said her favorite thing about New York is the subway because it gets you to all the places you want to go. Ladies and gentlemen, Edith.
There was a moment in my life, a terrible feeling that seemed that I was thrown in a boiling water. There is a feeling that I couldn't resist that kind of struggles, the kind of how to move this heat or cage, that it couldn't even voice out what I feel. It came to the point that my boss confronted me about the work that I'm doing regularly. Something that because I was very ill, the sickness that I couldn't move fast because I feel my head is spinning around and my eyes blurred and I feel very weak. And so at the time that my boss talked to me, confronted me that I'm not doing well my work, I feel terrible and I feel hurt when I always telling her going to the doctor because I need to physically the health treatment. And she kept telling me that it is unreasonable for you to get out from your job because we need you here. So I cannot do anything, doing all the things that I need to finish before going to the bed. I get up in the morning, so early in the morning, 6 o'clock, doing all the 3 stories, huge house with 2 birds freely flying all over the places, cleaning all the pools and the peas, sanitize everywhere, and trying to take care of the 4 kids and the youngest, 1.5-year-old. And being alone, it couldn't really do all this works in a day, but I do it every day. When winter comes, I need to shovel the snow, the 2 driveways, and pathways. And during the summertime, I need to clean the fence, which is covered with a lot of dirt, hardened dirt. Taking water from a distance with a pail of water to back and forth just to clean the fence. And it's really, makes me, my body getting terrible. The feeling is that my physical body is falling apart. And so it came to the point that I really cannot move anymore. And so I asked once more my boss to visit the doctor, and she kept telling me that, no way, you need to do the work. So one time that I went to I get my day off, I tried to find out how will I go to the doctor. And when I get back, she confronted me again and trying not to listen my explanation. And I cannot do anything again, and I went through my bed, and when I was in my bed, I grabbed my pillow and covered my mouth and shout as loud as I could. And I wish that somebody will hear me, somebody will help me to escape from that horrible workplace. And when I was on that moment, I called God, please help me find a way how to get out from this boiling water. The moment that I said that, seems that I feel alone, I feel isolated, I was devastated, traumatized, that I cannot even say anything to my friend, cannot even hold my phone to call somebody to help me. So what I just do is just to cry to release my feelings, until such time that, it came to my mind that if I were resigned to this job, how would I support my family in the Philippines? I came here because of my dream that I give them a better life. So I should have to stay. I need to stay. So this feeling drives me crazy every day, doing all these kind of works that make my body terrible. It seems that I'm not human. The feeling is that I'm different from them. And the mere fact that they are also human, that they can eat the good food, they can sit, they can sleep well. But me, I couldn't even feel my bed for a nice bed or something that I can taste the food, how does it taste. I can even have the space to sit on, to rest. And so I said, my God, please help me. What can I do? So please, until such time that I couldn't move. And I said, I don't like to die like this. Nobody will tell me to my family that I'm dying. So just in case, when my boss bought a ladder, triple my height, I was scared that I might be fall and might be die. And so when I had that feeling, I had that thinking in my mind, I said, oh my God, please make a way, make a way. I don't like this. I don't like to die like this. So please, until such time, I hold my phone in my bed and said, please help me here. I don't like this one. I don't like the way my boss treated me every day. When they saw me that I cannot move anymore, they kept scolding me, shouting at me, telling me that why I didn't do those things. So it came to the point that when I tried to ask my friend in the church, said, call the Mayan, ask help for them, from them. And so I tried to call the Mayan and find out how could I get the help. until such time that I found my way. And now I'm an organizer telling to the people, I want to break that wall. I want to break that wall that I can sit. I have the space to sit down. I have the space to rest. I have the space to exercise my rights. Being human, I need to exercise my rights to stay happily and smile and give power to all people that needs to be empowered to exercise their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Edith, thank you so much. It's such a powerful story, and it's a story that needs to be shared, and it's so shocking, and you are so just present with the things that so many of it. When I first heard the story, my thought was, I've heard that these things happen, but I don't understand them truly. And the ability to bring us there and understand how it felt to be in that situation is so powerful. And I just want to say thank you so much for your openness. Coming up next is a woman who said that her favorite thing about New York is it's a multi-culti. She said multi-culti to me, but it's yeah, it's multi-culti. And why does she like that? It's because you can hear 10 languages in walking down just one block in the city. Ladies and gentlemen, Fatima.
And then there was the day when I fell down the side of a mountain. Well, not literally down the side of a mountain. I was on a mountain. This was my 4th day in the US. I was here for college. From the dusty streets of Karachi, I was in the mountains of New Hampshire. So Dartmouth does this thing where, as a bonding exercise, we go do outdoorsy things. So we went. I went on an easy hiking trip. It was easy. Nobody told me that the pack would weigh more than I weighed. Nobody told me that it was going to be uphill all the way. Nobody told me that it was going to rain the whole time. This is the place where I discovered my deep-rooted hatred of couscous. So as time went on, this was a three-day trip. As time went on, I became even more unable to carry myself, let alone this pack, up the mountain. I did what I could. I was put in the front of the pack because, you know, it motivates you. Like it was a motivation thing. Anyway, and as we climb higher, my ears start to close, so I'm even more isolated. And when people tell American cultural sort of truths, I am not there. I can't hear them, but I don't understand them either. Hollywood did not prepare me for this. Anyway, we get off the mountain eventually. I get to